Welcome to the Assignment Guidance for Business Law for Managers, part of the OTHM Level 5 Diploma in Business Management. In this walkthrough, we'll go through each task and exactly what your assignment needs to cover. First, the unit overview. This is a Level 5, 20-credit unit assessed on a pass or refer basis, so your evidence must address every assessment criterion. The aim is to explore the laws, legislation, and regulations that apply to businesses, their legal structures, activities, and locations. There are 4 pieces of core evidence: a report for Task 1, an essay for Task 2, a presentation for Task 3, and an essay for Task 4. Use Harvard referencing throughout with a bibliography. Here's the assessment map. Task 1 is an 800-word report covering criteria 1.1 to 1.3. Task 2 is an 800-word essay covering 2.1 to 2.4. Task 3 is a 10-minute presentation of 5 to 600 words covering 3.1 to 3.4. And Task 4 is an 800-word essay covering 4.1 to 4.4. Keep each task separate, name your files clearly, and make sure each section matches its criteria directly. The scenario places you at 4 law workshops for local entrepreneurs and professionals starting a business. Use the law of your own country, unless your tutor asks for UK law. Pick one consistent business example to run through, such as a cafe, an online retailer, a private college, a care provider, or a construction company. Focus on practical business impact, not just legal definitions, and support your points with legislation, official guidance, case examples, and credible legal sources. Let's start with Task 1, a report on generic business law, its principles, and the difference between civil and criminal law. For the Task 1 report, here's the word plan. Open with an 80 to 100-word introduction on the purpose and scope of the report. Then, for 1.1, use around 250 words on why business-related laws are important. For 1.2, a similar length on the principles of business law. For 1.3, again around 250 words comparing civil and criminal law with business examples. Close with a short conclusion on why managers must understand their legal duties. Submit as a Word document, around 800 words, excluding references. For Criterion 1.1, explain that business law protects customers, employees, suppliers, owners, and the public. Cover fairness in trade, consumer protection, contract certainty, employment rights, health and safety, tax compliance, and dispute resolution. Give an example such as consumer law helping a customer get a refund for faulty goods, or contract law helping a supplier recover unpaid invoices. Strong answers link the law to business trust, reduced risk, market confidence, and legal accountability. For 1.2, explain principles such as legality, fairness, accountability, transparency, duty of care, liability, contractual freedom, and protection from harm. Show how these shape real decisions, like selling products, hiring staff, signing contracts, and handling complaints. For instance, a business is free to contract, but the terms must be lawful and generally cannot remove a customer's statutory rights. Don't just list the principles, explain how each one guides business behavior. For 1.3, compare civil and criminal law. Civil law deals with disputes between people, businesses, or organizations, with outcomes like compensation, an injunction, or a settlement. Criminal law deals with offences against the state or public, with outcomes like prosecution, fines, or imprisonment. For example, a customer suing for breach of contract is civil, while selling unsafe products or committing fraud is criminal. Compare their purpose, the parties, the standard of proof, the courts, the remedies, and the business consequences. Task 2 is an essay on the legal system and the justice system in a business context. Here's the plan for the Task 2 essay. Introduce it in 80 to 100 words on why these systems matter for business certainty. For 2.1, define the legal system in around 160 words. For 2.2, describe your country's legal system in about 250 words. For 2.3, define the justice system. And for 2.4, describe how justice is delivered. Finish by linking back to business confidence and enforcement. For criteria 2.1 and 2.2, define a legal system as the structure of laws, institutions, courts, and processes used to create, interpret, and enforce law. Describe the sources of law, such as legislation, case law, the Constitution, regulations, and treaties. Describe the institutions, like the legislature, the courts, regulators, and enforcement agencies. For England and Wales, you might reference Acts of Parliament, common law, and courts and tribunals. Then link it to business. The legal system provides the rules for contracts, company formation, tax, employment, and consumer transactions. For 2.3 and 2.4, define the justice system as the institutions and procedures used to resolve disputes, protect rights, and enforce responsibilities. Describe civil justice, including claims, evidence, hearings, remedies, and alternative dispute resolution. Describe criminal justice, from investigation and prosecution through to sentencing. Explain fairness principles like access to justice, impartial courts, due process, and the right to appeal. Then connect it to business. An effective justice system lets firms enforce contracts and deal with fraud, negligence, debt, and regulatory breaches. A common mistake. The legal system question asks what the rules and institutions are, for example, company law, contract law, and regulators. The justice system question asks how rights are enforced and disputes resolved, for example, court proceedings, tribunals, and mediation. Task 2 tends to fail when learners only describe courts. Define and describe both systems separately, then connect each to business. Task 3 is a presentation covering consumer law, contract law, the law of tort, and international law. Plan your presentation across about 7 slides, a title and purpose slide, then one each for consumer law, contract law, and the law of tort, followed by international laws, business impact examples, and a references slide. Keep it to 10 minutes and 500 to 600 words, and use speaker notes and visual aids to support you. On consumer law, cover product quality and safety, accurate descriptions, refunds, repairs and replacements, unfair terms, misleading advertising, and distance selling rights. For example, an online retailer must give accurate product descriptions, clear delivery information, and a fair complaints process. And if goods are faulty, the customer may have statutory remedies. Name the relevant legislation in your country and explain how it protects customers and shapes business policy. On contract law, cover the key features: offer, acceptance, consideration, intention to create legal relations, capacity, terms, performance, breach, and remedies. For example, if a supplier agrees to deliver stock by a fixed date and delivers late, that breach may give the buyer a right to damages where loss is proven. A useful angle is to explain how written contracts reduce uncertainty by setting price, delivery, payment, quality, liability, termination, and dispute clauses. On the law of tort, cover civil wrongs such as negligence, nuisance, occupier's liability, defamation, and product-related harm. For a negligence example, if a supermarket fails to clean a spill and a customer is injured, the business may be liable if it owed a duty of care, breached it, and caused loss. Explain duty of care, breach, causation, and damage. Then link tort to risk management, insurance, staff training, and health and safety. On international laws, cover trade agreements, import and export rules, cross-border data protection, intellectual property, employing overseas workers, sanctions, anti-bribery, and international contracts. For example, a UK business selling to EU customers must consider consumer terms, data protection, customs, taxes, delivery obligations, and dispute clauses. Avoid vague comments about global law and instead identify the specific legal areas that affect international business. A few quality tips for the presentation. Use short bullets on the slides and put your explanations in the speaker notes. For each area of law, cover the definition, key features, a business example, and the business impact. Use visuals, like a contract lifecycle, a refund process, or an import-export flow. Include citations and a final Harvard reference slide. Keep to 10 minutes and practice your timing before you submit. Task 4 is an essay on business formation, key legislation, contractual obligations, and resolving disputes. For the Task 4 essay, open with a short introduction on how law affects business formation and operation. For 4.1, around 190 words on the legal formation of businesses. For 4.2, a little more on the impact of key legislation. For 4.3, on the importance of contractual obligations. And for 4.4, on resolving legal disputes. Conclude that legal awareness reduces risk and supports responsible management. For 4.1, explain the common legal structures in your country, such as sole trader, partnership, limited company, public company, franchise, or social enterprise. Compare their formation requirements, registration, ownership, liability, tax, reporting duties, and control. For example, a limited company is a separate legal person, which usually limits the owner's liability but requires registration, filed accounts, and director duties. Good answers explain how the choice of structure affects risk, finance, control, and legal responsibility. For 4.2, choose legislation relevant to business operations, such as employment, consumer protection, health and safety, data protection, equality, tax, environmental, and company law. For each one, explain the business duty and the practical impact on policies, training, record-keeping, contracts, or costs. For example, data protection law affects how a business collects customer data, gains consent, stores it, handles breaches, and trains staff. Don't just name the acts, describe how they change business behavior. For 4.3, explain that contractual obligations are promises the parties are legally required to perform, like payment, delivery, confidentiality, quality, and deadlines. They matter because they reduce uncertainty, allocate risk, protect cash flow, create legal remedies, and support relationships. For example, a training provider promises course access, tutor support, and certification, while the learner promises payment and submission of work. Clear terms reduce disputes. Explain the ways to resolve disputes. Internal resolution covers complaint handling, revised terms, refunds, or corrective action. Formal legal action covers civil claims, tribunals, injunctions, or regulatory prosecution. And alternative dispute resolution covers mediation, conciliation, arbitration, or an ombudsman. Explain which option is faster, cheaper, confidential, or binding for a given dispute. A customer complaint might be resolved internally, while a serious breach may need mediation or court action. On referencing and evidence standards, use Harvard in-text citations for legislation, definitions, legal principles, cases, official guidance, and textbook points. Use reliable sources such as legislation websites, government guidance, regulators, law textbooks, and academic journals. Give full references at the end of each written task and on the final slide of Task 3. Make clear whether an example is a real case, a legal rule, or your own scenario. And always paraphrase and apply the law to business, rather than copying it. To submit for marking, provide the Task 1 report, Task 2 essay, Task 3 presentation, and Task 4 essay in recognized formats, Word for written work, and PowerPoint or PDF for the presentation. Use clear file names with your name, the unit title, and the task number. Check that every criterion from 1.1 to 4.4 is answered, and include Harvard references in each task. Submit your work to Learnerwork at ukversity.co.uk within 2 weeks of completing the unit delivery, unless your tutor sets another deadline. Finally, a checklist before you submit. Have you covered all criteria from 1.1 to 4.4? Does each task match the required format and word count? Have you used your country's law clearly and accurately and included examples showing business impact? Have you cited all sources in Harvard style, proofread your work and checked the similarity report? The PASS standard is clear explanation, accurate legal understanding, relevant examples, direct coverage of every criterion, and proper referencing. Good luck with your assignment.